is 6:35 on May 23rd, 2019. This is the regular board meeting for the Vernon Hills Park District Board of Commissioners. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Kessler.
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Commissioner Moline. Commissioner Baloo.
Present.
President Dorhoeffer.
Present. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda this evening is the omnibus vote agenda. Items under the omnibus vote agenda are considered routine and/or non-controversial and will be approved by one motion. If a separate vote on any one item is desired, it will be pulled from the omnibus vote and voted on separately. Items included in the omnibus vote for this evening are the minutes of the special board meeting dated March 28, 2019, minutes of the regular board meeting dated April 25th, 2019, minutes of the special board meeting dated May 10th, 2019, payables Les Granger, and payroll through May 23rd, 2019, in the amount of $914,470.43. Could I have a motion to approve the omnibus vote agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Baloo.
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler.
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins.
Yes.
President Dorhoeffer.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the welcome to visitors and guests public comment period. Being is that we are in here alone, we will move on to the financial reports for the period ending April 30th, 2019. Martha, are there any changes or additions to the reports that are on file?
No, my file as is, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, reports and communications, Executive Director Jeff Hoosier. Jeff?
I'd maybe ask if we want to just skip to item and
Be happy to.
have our two consultants, maybe
Be happy to.
instead of sitting through all the reports. So
Happy to do
items, under unfinished business, items 7A and B.
We will jump to unfinished business. Board okay with that?
Yes.
Sure.
First unfinished business is item A, the fuel tank remediation, IEPA update. Paul, could you please come up to the podium from Mankoff Industries and update us as to the situation?
All right. Last time I was here, we talked and the EPA, and this is for the contaminated soil at 7 Phillips Avenue where we removed the underground gasoline diesel tank, and it's been ongoing remediation. The last time I was here, the EPA wanted us to do some further investigation through soil borings and monitoring wells to define a plume, which they had us do 3 other times. And I know it's a long, dragged-out process, but if you want to be reimbursed, this is what they want. In any case, we finally defined it enough to where they said, okay, we feel this is the heavy concentration of contaminated soil, and now we want you to excavate it out. So they gave us approval to do that, and over the winter, we took out around 700 tons of contaminated soil, which they wanted us to do, and sampled it, and now we wrote our report. James has it, and it's gonna go to the EPA for their final review. We're hoping this is it. I mean, we've done everything they asked. I hope this is it. I can't tell you if they're gonna come back and tell us to dig a little more soil out, do some more soil borings. We don't think so. We're hoping this is it. And then if it does get approved, you're gonna have, there's gonna be 4 restrictions on the property. Because the way we cleaned it up, we met commercial and industrial standards. And what that means, when we dug the soil out and our geologist did the samples, we had the samples run in the laboratory. It came in below industrial and commercial use, but it came above residential use. So if you ever want this to be a residential property, you're gonna have to go back out and dig more soil out. They will allow you to keep it as commercial and residential. So that's one of the deed restrictions. Another one is an on-site groundwater use recovery system. Basically what it means is you can never put a well in there for drinking water. Your city water anyway, but these are all the caveats. You're gonna need to do an engineered barrier because there is still contaminated soil, but because it's below the limits, an engineered barrier means put asphalt down, which you're gonna do anyway. so that'll keep any contamination from coming up. That's another caveat. And the only other one is, if you ever do any construction work in that area, and you're gonna dig up soil, you're gonna have to bring it to a landfill that accepts this type of soil. You can't bring it to another park, you can't bring it to a regular landfill. It has to go to a landfill that accepts this type of waste. But they will close the site out with those caveats. And that's what we're hoping for. We really feel, I mean, we're in constant communication with the project manager at the EPA, we know him well. He's very anal with what he wants. Again, like I told you last time, if it wasn't for that stream and the water that's close to the property, this would have been closed years ago. But because of that, this is what's going on, and they made us dig out the soil, and hopefully that's it. So the deed restrictions really aren't, I don't know if that property's probably not zoned for residential use anyway, ever.
No, it's
You're not
not.
gonna turn it into a park ever, so those really aren't tough restrictions to live with, but it will meet industrial, commercial standards. So
Would-
once James sends the report, and we'll get it back from him and keep our fingers crossed.
How long does that typically take?
To hear back from the
They
EPA.
have to respond back within 4 months. That's a lot.
And they usually take all 4
And
months.
you get in line, and I know there's been other times where you guys have had some contacts down there that might be able to help prod it. I can't do anything, I'm just a contractor, another guy calling because their client wants, expedited, time, but if you guys have someone you can call down there, maybe that'll help, but by law, they have to answer within 4 months.
Very good. Any questions? Paul, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Next item on the agenda is Evergreen Lake. Jed from Christopher Burke Engineering, if you could come to the podium and fill us in.
Sure. So I'm Jed Anderson with Christopher Burke Engineering. I've been there 30 years, so a long time. So we were asked to evaluate 3 ponds, and tonight I'm going to talk about Evergreen Lake. Actually, there's a photo of it back there on the wall, if you want to look at that. But it's a pond of about 5.5 acres. It's a constructed stormwater management pond. It's got 3,600 linear feet of shoreline, so it's got a lot of shoreline. There's been roughly 600 linear feet of recently completed shoreline stabilization on the west side, the north and west side. Much of the lake existing shoreline has severe erosion. Can I forward through this, James?
Left arrow
Yeah.
to go forward.
It's not going.
You can jump in here.
Oh, here, okay. So there's the lake. Let me go back to some of the photos. So if you look, these are good example photos here. So much of the lake has an eroded shoreline. It's basically mowed up to the edge. That lawn grass really has no ability to withstand erosional forces. So a lot of shoreline, and you know this from the previous shoreline stabilization project, a lot of that shoreline is caving in, cleaving in, and then that sediment is depositing into the lake. So one of our recommendations is go in and finish that bank stabilization practice, following that same treatment. That's the treatment that I use myself in a lot of different projects that we work on, very similar, same size riprap, basically the same detail that was used. The company that you did had it do it before is a company we use all the time, Earthworks. They do a great job. Cost is obviously an issue. Based on, James gave me the cost of the original project, I just prorated it out. To complete the remaining shoreline stabilization, which would be about 33,000 feet, would cost about $420,000. So it's a pretty hefty sum. Now, you could phase it. There are sections of it that are worse than others. We could come in and prioritize those sections that need it most and then just work it out over a number of years. That's a way a lot of our clients would do it. That's probably the least painful. In terms of the, one of the parts of the evaluation was whether or not it needs to be dredged. I understand that's been a concern of a bunch of different people. From what I can tell, from the information I have, that lake was probably constructed roughly 10 feet deep initially, originally, maybe a little bit less. I suspect that there might be sediment in the bottom that's 2 to 3 feet deep in the deepest parts. We have not gone out in a boat and evaluated it. We could do that. We have a sounding device. We'd take a GPS. We would locate every point and we would probe and determine the depth of the sediment. But really, I don't think the sediment is really the issue at this point in time. It's stabilization of the shoreline. And then our number one recommendation in our report is installing an aeration system, not fountains, but bubble aeration. And so these would be a small cabinet mounted on the shoreline. There's already electrical out there for the fountains that are there. It's a small cabinet about this big. It's a high volume, low pressure compressor that just goes out to basically air stones like in an aquarium. The key for aeration, is circulating the water, aerating the water. Why do we want to do this? Right now, there's a lot of organic sediment in the lake. That sediment turns into sludge and it just deposits on the lake and it just stays there. The water becomes anoxic to the point where there's not enough biologic activity, so it's anaerobic activity, not aerobic. So it's a very slow decomposition. So this is why peat bogs form, why wetlands have black soils, because they're not decomposing that organic matter. And so that's happening in the bottom of the lake. So if you aerate the system, you'll improve the decomposition of that organic sludge in the bottom of the lake. Depending on how effective it is, you could actually lower the bottom of the lake because you're eating away at that organic sludge. And over time, it could eat away at it and lower it. The aeration then would also put off the necessity for having to dredge. If we were up to go out there and found that the lake only had 2 feet, if it was designed to be 10 feet deep and it's 8 feet deep now, the reality is with an aeration system, now you have enough oxygen in there so the fish and all the aquatic organisms can survive and not have fish kills. You could put off the dredging. It may not be necessarily beneficial. The only reason for this lake that I would recommend dredging is we found that the water was 7 feet or shallower deep, where the aeration system is not going to be as effective because, again, the aeration, the bubbles come off the bottom, it creates a convection, and it helps move the whole water column. With shallower waters, obviously, you're not moving as much water. You don't get as much circulation. Dredging is also very expensive. Just like the fellow here a second ago talking about having to dispose of that contaminated waste in a solid waste landfill. Generally speaking, dredged material like this is deposited here from urban runoff, right? All that driveway sealant, asphalt, those put out heavy metals. You have the cars, you have leaking things, depositing in that lake sediment. So you're above that residential standard for contamination. So typically, what happens is either you would dredge it and retain it on site if you can find a place that's not floodplain or floodway, and usually you make it into a landscape berm or a sled hill or something like that. If you don't have that room to do that, then you have to take it off-site. And as soon as you take it off-site, if you can move to your own park, that's still be cost-effective, probably, other than the additional trucking costs. But if you don't have a place you can store it on Park District property, and it has to go to a sanitary waste landfill, just gonna throw out some base numbers. If you had 5.5 acres of lake, like I said before, and you remove 1 foot of sediment over the entire lake, that would cost $400,000 roughly to retain it on site. If you were to take it off site to a sanitary waste landfill, you're looking at something like $700,000. So that's why I'm saying it may not be cost effective. It's probably more effective to evaluate and see if we do have those deep holes out there and then do the aeration system. Because the aeration system will help prolong the life of the lake, and it's much less costly. An aeration system for a lake like this, I'm guessing it's gonna be something like $15,000. It's a low investment, a lot of benefit though, both from a water quality standpoint and from an aesthetic standpoint. That coupled with the shoreline stabilization would really be where I would say your biggest bang for the buck is. That's really the broad summary of the report. If you want to ask me questions.
Go ahead. Don't we have bubblers out there?
There is a bubbler, but it's not, an aerator bubbler. It's just a line that has holes in it. And it really doesn't do anything. And a lot of times it's stuck in the sediment and muck, and all it does is, it really doesn't do much.
Okay.
The fountain is on the south end.
Right.
In August, you'll see the ring that there's nothing growing, and then outside the ring, it's curly leaf, weed pond.
How many bubblers do you think, Jed?
You're, lake that long, you'd have probably 4 major lines, but you're gonna have offshoots. So you're probably gonna have 2 cabinets. And with heads, you're probably gonna end up with something like 8 total heads. What I would do is what I'd like to do is go out there in a boat, assess how deep it is. Then we can calculate the rough volume of water. Then I can send it to the manufacturers and they'll actually design the system for you.
So just to interrupt, after we talked, I did talk to Veritex,
Yeah.
and they did suggest 2 cabinets, 3 bubbler aerators, just 2 diffusers on each one.
So 6.
So 6 or 12 technically, if you want to say it.
Yeah.
And we have the 2 cabinets, and it's a $13,500. So it's right along with his estimates.
How deep do we have to be to use the bubblers? Because we're guessing it's probably 2 feet.
If it's 2 feet, that's gonna be too shallow. If you do have places where it's 6, 7 feet, that's doable. If it's,
Your 2 to 3 feet, my guess is most of the lake.
We had a crude study done in 14. This was 2014. It's already 19. The middle of the lake was about 8 to 10-ish. It drops off to 2 to 3 towards the shoreline, yes.
yeah,
So there's some deep spots.
so what we do in a situation like this is pick those, be strategic about it again, right? It's really expensive. Maybe assign a budget amount to it if you decide you really need to budget or to dredge it. Maybe you say, we're gonna spend $200,000. And we're gonna focus on those places where the greatest quantity of sediment loading is, right? Wherever there's a storm sewer pipe, or there's a major outfall. Remember, that load comes out of those pipes, the heavies deposit almost immediately. The fines work their way out, and so it's just like in the Mississippi River Delta, right? You start getting these plumes of sediment. So you isolate and excavate those plumes to get, again, don't cost prohibitive to dredge the entire lake, but focus on those spots where you think it's the worst. And that's easy enough to do with, again, doing the soundings out in the lake, and we can create a bathymetric map of it.
So can you move around these bubblers?
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
they're, it's a weighted base with a weighted hose. You just set them down with a boat, you just go out there and set them.
And how, you mentioned that they can help, if it's deep enough, it will
It's gonna-
start removing some of the sediment
Right,
naturally.
it's gonna promote a lot of aerobic bacterial action, which is gonna decompose all that organic sludge.
So do you think over time, instead of spending all the money to dredge it and everything, we could just put them out there and move them around, and over time, we would get lower? Or, I don't know, it just seemed to
This
make
is a tough
sense.
question I answer every time I give one of these presentations. You'll read some things on the internet that say, we'll lower the pond bottom by a foot per year, and that's not gonna happen. It's either gonna be static, or it's gonna be incrementally, maybe a centimeter or 2 a year, right? It's not gonna be a foot like you read in a lot of these websites.
Okay.
I've
I
talked
did
to
go
so
on some
many
websites.
peers that do what I do, and we all agree, that's not happening. But what you're doing is, the important part of it is, remember, with the aerobic activity, the waste product from the bacteria is gas. You're helping to release that gas to the surface by the bubble extract itself, so you're expressing this, so it can't be reused by the vegetation growing in there. One other thing I didn't mention in the report is a product called Phoslock. So if you have a lot of aquatics and algae, you could do something like Phoslock, which is something that locks the phosphorus, drops it out of the water. It's essentially something like a polymer, right? If you know what polymer is, how they flocculate. Well, it's essentially doing that to phosphorus in the entire water column, and drops to the bottom and locks it in the bottom. And so you'll clear far the water, and you'll have a significant drop in available nutrients.
And I read there, not in your report, but online, that there's chemicals you can put in. And is that an option? Is that something we
Yeah,
could?
it is something.
do
I went out there when it was pretty cool. I didn't really see how, the other two lakes I did see, they had a lot of algae problems. They might be too small for this treatment, but this one I think is big enough. If the algae and the aquatic vegetation is that bad. So you'd lock it and then you, and putting the bubbler systems in there, right? So now you've locked up all the phosphorus that's there now, can't be used again. And now you're creating all this oxygen to eat all this new organic sediment that wants to, deposit in there.
So I did have two proposals from two different aquatic management companies that do spray weeds and do treatments. There is a bio-dredge tablet. It's the size of a briquette. It's basically bacteria that eat it. They need aeration. They need air though. So just throwing it now would do nothing. They don't guarantee anything because it hasn't been really used in the Midwest. But that was another $15,000 to $20,000 a year. And doing it one time for one, it doesn't do anything. You got to continue with the program. So that was kind of a yearly $15,000 to $20,000, and then plus the $13,500. Still less than dredging, but that is an option that we could look
throwing this
into.
out. So for Lake Charles, we also did a study on Lake Charles for the Flint Hills, and they wanted us to look into the tablets. So we suggested, again, in the Midwest, several of the pond companies just have not had a very effective with the bacteria and enzymes, again, because we have such long cold spells. Again, without the aeration, those critters don't have anything, they can't function, it goes back anaerobic again. We suggested that they might give it a try as like a test case and maybe do something where they work with Lake Forest College or College of Lake County and actually do a study to see how effective it is. Like James said, it's really expensive. So maybe do it as a test for maybe one summer, see if they're, measure it before, do a summer's worth, and then come out after, measure and see if there's actually some benefit to it.
I have another question. Do you have some images of what you think the shoreline should look like? You said not to let the grass grow, not to cut it. What are the images, or do you have something to?
I didn't bring any.
I mean,
with
if you
me.
go out to the 5 acres off of Deer Path, that's what it would look like. The new shoreline restoration we did 2 years ago with the village.
Southwest.
Yes, southwest.
Closest to,
Are you
I
talking
don't
about
know.
on this? I have
Century Park.
some-
You have that?
I think I have some pictures of it.
You're not,
Are you familiar with Century? Remember the original restoration we did in Century with the stone?
right.
That's what it is.
So, but do we need the stone, or could we just have vegetation?
No,
Question.
no, you're not, it's not gonna work.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Vegetation will work too.
This gets into this whole bioengineering thing you hear about all the time. I'm gonna use a creek example in a wetland mitigation area I worked on years ago. So I-355, when they constructed the first section, they built a wetland mitigation area. They tied it in directly to the water level of the DuPage River, East Branch
Chad, could
DuPage
you
River.
do me a favor and speak into the mic?
Yeah, I just
so
talk
we
so
can
loud.
record it?
With the fluctuating water, so they've tied this wetland mitigation area directly in the creek. Every creek you see has a scour line, right? There's usually a zone of mud, right? That's where the water levels fluctuate, that's where the water, the ice, all this causes scour, that's the scour line. Well, this wetland mitigation area that was constructed by, designed by another company, they tied it directly into the river. It's 100% failure. So we were hired to go out and figure out what went wrong with this thing. Well, we surveyed the elevation of the scar line, and we went into the wetland mitigation areas, exactly the same line. Well, there was no velocity, there was no ice shove, there's no ice jams, there were none of these things that would normally cause a scour line to form. But it was there because of all the salt loading and everything else in the water. So that non-vegetated zone existed because of just the bad water quality, right? So when we designed a brand new area and we raised it above that elevation. So in a lake like this, this is kind of the same situation. You have this bounce, you have ice that forms, it jams up against the shoreline. You're using lawn grass, which has virtually roots 2 to 3 inches deep. It just has no cohesive strength to withstand this. As soon as it gets undercut, it starts cleaving off and falling into the lake. If you were to take that upper left-hand picture and then add a native fringe to it, and also take the riprap and top dress it with topsoil to kind of chink the rock with soil, seed all that, you would find that over time the native vegetation will grow down into those rocks to some elevation to hide the rock. And I can send James some photos tomorrow or Tuesday, I'm off tomorrow, of pictures of similar situations where that's what we did, where the vegetation grows down the rock and you start hiding it, and then but you have to just again the native vegetation, deep roots, locks everything together, but it also camouflages the rock so it's not that white stark look.
Yeah, I guess, just to kind of finish my thought process on that, when I was looking at it or reading up on some of it, they were saying you should have vegetation, something along the line, and then they talked about even aerating the grass or the thing prior to it to try to capture as much as you can prior to it flowing into the pond. So, I mean, it seems like if it was just the rock, it would still, everything would flow right in.
Yeah, I mean, the preference would be to have a native fringe.
Right.
So on that rock, there is 10 feet buffer of a native mesomix. He happened to take the picture after we had just mowed it,
Yeah.
just to try to keep it down once a year.
It's
And
hard
how
to-
long of a fringe should there be?
I generally recommend at least 8 feet.
So yeah, we left the 10-foot buffer.
On the last project.
On the
that was
top
done
left
last
corner.
fall. You go over by Evergreen, go over by Willow Lake too, which is just on the north end there, over by Warrington. And there's no fringe because people cut their grass right to the shore. And it's the same thing with Evergreen. A lot of the property owners go, there's a little bit of it, but they cut their grass right to the shoreline. And now, the area that James just spoke about, that the village did that project last year, there's no real property. There's a little bit of property owner on that far north
It's
end
too-
along the path,
Yeah,
but,
it's too wide.
Yeah.
yeah.
How many inlets do we have into that lake? 3?
There's 2 main ones and then one that leaves to the CV ditch. And then there is a small one on the east side, but I feel that's more of a
North-
balancing tube of some kind.
Northeast?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The biggest one was in the top left and the bottom left pictures.
Yeah.
That's the biggest outfall coming from the Deer Path subdivision.
So for the boards, just a reminder, in our capital plan, we have $50,000 allocated for this project. So you can, listen to Jed's, recommendation in terms of potential, direction. The village is still, they met with some residents that were encouraging the village to partner with us on a match and see if we can get that number up closer to 100K. So I think that's something I could certainly follow through with the village and see where they're going with that. And, if that's a direction that you want to pursue versus, because originally we were just going to do a complete sediment removal for 50,000 and see where it got us.
But it seems like putting in aerators would be a better,
But, if I was gonna focus my money, the biggest bang for buck, I would install the aeration unit first. Then re-walk the shoreline and ID those worst offending locations and armor those worst offending locations.
Yeah.
And then chip away at it. Or, for example, the Glenview Golf Club, they spent 6 years. Every year they took $50,000 or $100,000, I can't remember the number now. But after 6 years, they had stabilized, a couple thousand feet of their river going through their golf course. So you just budget every year to keep chipping away at it.
Commissioner Robbins?
When you started your presentation, you threw out a number of $420,000.
Yeah, so that was for using, James had given me the cost of the project, that project up there in the upper left-hand corner. And then I just did the math. It was $140 a linear foot to do that project. And just do, there's 3,000 linear feet left to do. 3,000 times 140, rounding up, ends up being about $420,000.
Because I'm reading, there's like 8 pages of different recommendations, and they total a lot more than $420,000. And,
Right.
and when I hear we have 50,000 and maybe 100,000 if we get a matching, is this like a Band-Aid that we're gonna be putting on this thing, and it's not gonna?
Yeah, no,
Again, the two most important things here, from my perspective, are aeration and the shoreline stabilization, because the eroding shoreline is adding to the sediment of the lake, right? You gotta stop, if you really wanna stop the lake from getting shallower, let's remove a major source of sediment contributing to it.
And we have a 3-year plan that we allocated within it. So we have a 50-50-50 over the next 3 years.
And part of the recommendation is there's also 2 ponds at Grosse Point that's included in a lot of this language. So some of those costs are some of those, and that's
That you're reading.
something we're just gonna budget
Those are
for.
bad.
Yes, that's,
Having fish in the water, does that cause issues?
No, that would be beneficial from my perspective, because you're helping keep down the mosquitoes and all the other stuff, yeah.
Any other questions for Jed?
I have one more question.
Commissioner Kessler?
In your report, I think you said something like, if we chose to keep it a pond. And I think, are there any other options? Or if we're struggling so hard, is there any other option to do?
Well, Naperville Park District, for example, in my subdivision, it's called Maywatch Lake, is converting to, it's a pond that was built in '83, so it's kind of the same age as this. They've kind of thrown in the towel on a big chunk of it. It's converted, it's mostly, one half of the lake is now lily pads. And then the back half, because that's where the sediment's coming in, that's where all the lily pads are. Then there's a bridge in the middle that kind of throttles it down, so that sediment stays on this side. On the other side is still fishable, but that front lobe is, if I continue living there with another 10 years, it's gonna end up just being a wetland, like an emergent aquatic wetland.
And is that a bad thing?
No.
Can it
No, but
be-
it's the residents.
That's what you want.
Lily
Aesthetic.
pad sounds nice. But I mean, if it can
Not if you live
grow
there.
some nice things
Oh, yeah, I mean,
in
when
there,
you
is
walk
that-
around there now, there's tons of herons and egrets, and, it's a different habitat, you get a lot of different wildlife. And it becomes down to the residents' expectations, right? And I can't tell you what your residents'
Yeah.
preference is.
Well, I'm not-
Send
I'm
your
not so
letters
much-
to Commissioner Kessler.
I'm not necessarily thinking for Evergreen, because it's too big and it's in a major park, but I'm thinking for the
Gross point.
Grosse Point possible, a little bit smaller, if it's so expensive for the funds, and if we can do something to make it look better than what it is now,
Yeah, to me, that's kind of an easy one. I'd cut down all the brush and trees around it, because it's overgrown. And then literally, you can go buy a bag of lily pad seed for $100 and just walk around it, because they sink, and just walk around like Johnny Appleseed, and pretty soon you'll have the whole thing lily pads. It'll be beautiful.
that was something that Jen and I discussed. Well, we will have to have a significant meeting to have all those residents, because
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
well, it might even look, well,
We just did.
it probably will look a little nicer, yes.
Okay.
All right, Jed, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jed.
All right, let's go back to Commissioner Committee report, or I'm sorry, Reports and Communication, Executive Director Jeff Fuscher. Jeff,
So did we do the financial reports?
We did.
you did?
Did all that? Okay, I didn't know if we, okay, thank you. Well, first, just wanted to congratulate the board and staff on being recognized as a finalist for the National Parks and Rec Association Gold Medal Award. As you know, that this is the elite award that a park and recreation agency can receive at a national level. So Cheryl and Cassidy have spent an enormous amount of time over the last several days, especially putting our video, which is the last part of our application process together. So we'll have that finished up by mid next week.
It's like 99% done.
Yeah,
It'll be on the website
yeah,
next
looks
week.
good so far. Looks good. Thank you. So then that'll be announced at the NRPA conference in late September. The kindergarten center, if you haven't been by there, things are moving along. Obviously all the trees are done. Now they're starting an excavation process. From a scheduling standpoint, things are on play, and we haven't seen too much traffic back here. I think as you pulled in you probably saw the trailer, the construction trailer, that's back in the corner of the lot too. I'll let James touch base on the update on the Grosse Point retaining wall. The FAC, our Family Aquatic Center, we opened this Saturday, May 25th, at 11 a.m., I believe, Tom? I think. Yeah, the weather, who knows what our weather's gonna be on Saturday. We've had some good weather, but yeah, just our Dave Swike and his team have been just working a ton of time getting that facility up and ready. But, things look good, knock on wood. Everything's functioning well, the chemistry's well, the heaters are working, so we're warming water. Our staff is in place, and things are looking good, so. We are, if people see this, we're closed. The Sullivan Center is closed on Memorial Day. We do have our Lakeview Fitness Center that's open from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. on that day. Our community survey, which we do every 5 years, is scheduled to launch on Monday, June 3rd. And so we'll just push that out as much as we can and try to get as many people within the community. For the communities, just for their benefit, we'll have that available online, so people can go right from their desktops, their iPads, their cell phones, however they like to complete that survey, and we will provide them with a $10 coupon for completing the survey, and that coupon can be used towards a purchase of a program or a registration on a program, or even use at the Family Aquatic Center. Our June Park Board meeting, which is on the agenda for the board, is just to notify that we're moving the June meeting outdoors, as we have historically for the last several years, and that'll be held at Hawthorne Melody Park in Greg's Landing. We will do a community barbecue and at 5 o'clock on that June 27th date, and then the board meeting will start promptly at 6:30 right after that. We've got our farmers market scheduled to commence on Thursday, June 6th. So this is a new program for us. We have, I believe Jack told me the other day, 12 vendors. He's still working on a couple. We'll be in the parking lot there. We don't want to get people out on the grass just yet, although if you drove by Century Park South, the grass is looking pretty good. This weather's been really helpful, a lot of rain, and it's good sun during the day. So it's good for germination. So our primary focus is we want to have good sturdy grass by 4th of July. We expect thousands of people to be in the park. Hartman Park, we've got this futsal court, which is a fancy word for an outdoor soccer facility. It's an inline hockey facility that we have at Hartman that's over 20 years old and just is in dire need of repair. So that particular amenity just needs a new facelift, and so we've got new flooring going in there, new court surface, new goals being put in, all new protective netting around the perimeter. So we fully anticipate that facility is going to get used a lot, as it does even now. So that's scheduled to begin the latter part of June. They say it'll take about a week to do. And then James and his team is going to work on removing the goals, and then we'll put in the goals once that's completed. You heard from Evergreen Lake tonight, and then the last item is you just have the annual budget and appropriation ordinance before you tonight for the board to adopt. That's all I got. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jeff? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Finance and HR Superintendent Marla DeSico. Marla?
Good evening. Just a couple quick items tonight. On May 6th, the transition from from MB Bank to Fifth Third Bank was completed, so that is now the Park District's bank. Everything has gone smoothly, so processing is moving as it was in the past. No changes in locations or in processing our P cards, so everything's going very well. Every year in April and May, we evaluate all staff, and then evaluation increases are given out at the start of June. So everyone's been busy with those evaluations. We evaluate all full-time and part-time staff, and then seasonal staff at the end of their summer season. And we just recently completed training for all of our full-time supervisors, covering a variety of summertime HR topics. Any questions?
Any questions for Marla? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Recreation Superintendent Tom Ritter. Tom?
Good evening. Had a longer report this month with camp and the pool and everything else starting. I forgot one of our big events that's coming up. We're excited to be starting food trucks in the park on Tuesdays, once a month. So from June through September, we'll have a food truck at a various location from 10:30 to 1:30. And the Park District staff will be out with some things like Bago and some other yard games for people that might want to get some exercise during their lunch break. Our first food truck is going to be on June 4th from, again, 10:30 to 1:30. The location is going to be the Century Park Boat Dock Shelter, and it's going to be Mario's Cart. So we hope to see everybody come out to that first one. I can also tell you our July date, which is July 2, is going to be held at Lakeview Fitness in the parking lot, and the vendor will be Arnold's Tacos. So look forward to seeing everybody. And only one thing of the past I wanted to mention. I just wanted to thank everybody because there was so much support from the community for our Recycle-A-Rama. We had 624 cars pass through the Farm Mall parking lot this past Saturday. I would say the majority of them were shredding paper this year. Still a lot of electronics recycling, but shredding was number one. Collected textiles, shoes, latex paint, lots of things. So I wanted to thank the township, provided staff, Vernon Township, the Village of Vernon Hills, our staff, park maintenance staff, as well as other volunteers, State Representative Diddich, who took care of the shredding, the mall for giving us the parking lot, and Swalco, of course, who helps coordinate all the electronics recycling for us. Oh, I can't forget Advanced Disposal, because they were huge this year in helping us with the electronics. Coming up in June, we have the Kids Fishing Day on Saturday, June 8th, from 9 to noon over at Century Park. Always have to thank the Libertyville Fishing Club. They are instrumental in making that a fun day for the kids, teaching them about safety, as well as teaching about the different types of fish they're going to catch and do catch. Registration is currently being accepted for that event. June 22nd and the morning of June 23rd is our overnight family campout at the Family Aquatic Center. This will be our 10th one already. I can't believe it. For those that aren't familiar, we close the pool a little bit early, and families can come out and camp in the back of the Aquatic Center. We show a movie. This year we're showing the movie Holes. We have a bonfire with s'mores. Bobo's provides a pancake breakfast the next morning. And we usually have around 250 people, I would say, but between 50 and 60 campers, or 65 campsites reserved. Our Movies in the Park series continues this summer. They are free. They're held at Deer Path Park near the Warrington Road entrance. Our 3 dates for movies this year are June 28th, July 26th, and August 23rd. The movies each of those months will be Mary Poppins Returns, Christopher Robin, and Monsters, Inc. We have our headliners to announce for Ribfest this coming August 16th and 17th. Friday night's headliner will be Blues Beatles. They're a band out of Brazil, have a huge following. They're blues guys who do a very, very good job covering Beatles music. That should, I would hope, have a good draw with such a following for such a great band. And Saturday night's headliner is Kenny Neal. Kenny Neal played in Buddy Guy's band when he was 16 years old. His dad was a famous harmonica player. He's based out of Louisiana. And the opener for Kenny Neal is going to be Kevin Purcell and the Nightburners, who we had 2 years ago and had a very good response through a local band with a very good following. So we're excited to have them back. Another new event. We are going to be doing an adult event at the Aquatic Center on July 27th called Fins Up. The Fins with 2 N's in there because Mickey Fins is sponsoring and supporting this event. It's basically an opportunity for adults to come out, have some craft beer, some margaritas, play some adult trivia in the concession area while also swimming. So this will be new for us. It's 7:30 to 10 p.m. that date, which again is the 27th of July. Admission's only $5, but does not include the alcohol. We talked about the pool. Reminding our residents that with the pool opening in a few weeks on June 10th, we will be starting our adult water walking and lap swimming programs. They're offered 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 10:15 a.m. And on the weekends, it's from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. There's a daily admission fee, and there's also the opportunity to get a punch pass as well. And we also offer a parent tot swim from 9 to 10:15 in the morning, every day except Friday. And just finally, I wanted to thank the University of Illinois Extension Master Gardeners of Lake County. They provide 2 free gardening workshops for us in May. One's already passed, but there is one coming up on Wednesday, May 29th. It's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at the Century Park Pavilion. It's a container gardening class. So if people are interested, they can register online or at the Sullivan Center. But we do encourage people to register so we know how many people to plan for. We can take as many as 50. And that's my report, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Tom? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Marketing Communications Manager Cheryl Buman. Cheryl?
Good evening. Excuse me. Well, as Jeff said, the past month has probably been spent mostly on gold medal. So it is done, our video, like 99%. It will be on our website next week, so I hope you all enjoy it. It'll be on the homepage. Our RibFest website is live as of today, so you can click on the slide and it will take you to all the information about RibFest, and as new information comes up, we'll update it more. But all the information that we have as of today is on our website. We had our first go walk. The weather was really cold and a little bit dark, but we did have 25 walkers show up this week on the 21st, so they were really nice, and they're looking forward to our next walks, hopefully on a nicer summer evening. So that's my report for the evening. Not too much this month.
Any questions for Cheryl? Next item is the Park Superintendent, James Kim. James?
Good evening. I'd like to start with the Grosse Pointe Park Path updates. They're hoping to finish by Friday because we did implement a bonus slash incentive slash non-compliant, I guess you'd call it, penalty at $425 per day, and they are moving very quickly, so it is worth putting that in. The sill fencing will remain until about 75% of the growth is on site, as per Lake County Stormwater. Just want to thank Jed for coming out. He brought some interesting information, and because of that information, Lake County Health Department's Water Biologist Department is looking to test our lakes just for nutrients and sediment. It's got nothing to do with because it's impaired. It is just a random selection. So they just want to gain better perspective on what's happening in our Des Plaines Waterway Workshed group. This is the second year that Lake County Health Department has conducted this testing. The first year they worked on the chain of lakes connecting to the Fox River. In addition, the Illinois EPA is also going to conduct their own water quality testing at Little Bear, Big Bear Lake. Again, this is just coincidental. They just happen to be in Lake County this year. Jeff alluded the June Park Board meeting in Hawthorne Melody. I'm still waiting on approval or recommendation from IDNR for removing the ball field. Because it is an odds-led project, I hope to have a definite answer by our June Park Board meeting for residents. Rick Crozier, our arborist and horticulturist, he's going to start his Arbor Walk series starting Saturday, June 1st from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Century Park North Pavilion. It's 1401 Indianwood Drive. If you'd like to learn more about our Century Park Arboretum with Rick, he'll be walking around for 2 hours talking about it. He will have a second walk sometime in mid to late October, both at Century Park and at the Oak Savannah like he did last year. And last, I really want to thank the Vernon Hills Public Works Department for assisting us with various tasks the past couple of weeks. Some of it has been helping us chip, some of it has been moving some of the sheds for the kindergarten right out here, and helping us out at Century Park South. So I must say I do really appreciate having that working relationship with them in town. And that concludes my report. If there's any questions.
Any questions for James? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Facility Manager Joe Zimmerman. Joe?
Is it working?
Oh, now it is.
All right. Active members as of the end of April for Lakeview, we had 2,232 compared to last year. End of April, we had 2,144. We saw an increase in personal training sessions at 327. Membership visits, we had a little over 12,000, and our group fitness attendance was a little over 4,000. Some aquatic notes, aquatic summer training for Lakeview and FAC starts at the end of this month. Swim lesson training for summer staff will begin late May, early June. And then some Lakeview notes. Currently, we have our student and educator summer membership, May 1st to July 1st. Students ages 14 to 25 and educators with a valid ID can purchase a 90-day summer membership. We also finished our personal training promo in April. It was very successful. We sold over 60 packages. Speaking of personal training, and this is kudos to our fitness supervisor, Lacey Velasquez, this year has been extremely successful. We've been doing, we're outpacing all our goals, and it's been really great. Group exercise, we're hoping to add another chair yoga class at Sullivan. There's been a lot of demand, and the classes are overflowing. Also, the summer schedule for the Group X should be out in the next few weeks, or sorry, this is before, will be out in the next week. We will be losing our Tuesday night power Pilates class due to our instructor leaving. Most likely we'll be replacing it with Hatha Yoga. We also just installed some new equipment at Lakeview to provide more options for our members. We sent out a newsletter to members, let them know of the additions and included videos on how to use it. We've also included little signs on the equipment to let them know to ask for help if they need to know how to use it. We're also going to team up with marketing to film our instructors, demonstrating how to use it, and then put that on social media. And if any member has any question, please ask one of our staff. Finally, we held a How to Create a Great Training Experience seminar on May 9th. Its focus was helping trainers and instructors create a better training experience with our members, their members. Over 20 people attended from various park districts, and so far the feedback has been very positive. That's my report for tonight. If there are any questions.
Any questions for Joe? Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, Commissioner Committee reports. We have none. Next item is board correspondence. We have received a letter from the Shadow Creek at Greg's Landing Condominium Association. Addressed to Mr. Fugero, it says, please be advised that the Shadow Creek Condo Board approved the following in its April 2019 meeting. The Board of Shadow Creek Circle Condominium Association, located in Greg's Landing, supports and approved the Vernon Hills Park District's plan to growth on the south side of the creek from Hazeltine along the Shadow Creek Circle community located immediately north of our residence. The board is pleased with the plan because it will help eliminate the invasive plants and give trees more room to flourish. If during the process you or your contractor needs to enter the association's property, the board approves the access. If you can please provide with updates when the work begins, I will let the owners know the status. Please let me know if there's anything else you need from us. Sincerely, Stephen Herbeck from the property management. So thank you very much for that. We do appreciate that. We've concluded unfinished business. We will move to new business. Ordinance 4-19, an ordinance making a combined annual budget and appropriation of funds for the Vernon Hills Park District for fiscal year beginning June 1, 2019 and ending May 31st, 2020. Could I have a motion to approve ordinance 4-19?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call?
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Blue?
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
President Dorhoeffer?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the June 27th regular park board meeting location change. We would like to announce that June 27th, 2019, the regular park board meeting will take place at Hawthorne Melody Park. The park is located at 2221 Hazeltine Drive. A community barbecue will be held prior to the meeting from 5 to 6:30. We hope you'll come out and partake of the food and enjoy our company. Next item on the agenda is the election of president and vice president. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Fugere.
Okay, thank you. So as customary as the secretary, this is our annual meeting for the Park District, and we elect board officers. We also appoint the board secretary, board treasurer, and the corporate counsel as a standard statute practice that we must comply with. So the first item is for the election of president for the board. And I will now take nominations for the election of Park Board President. I'd ask if there's any nominations to be heard from the dais.
I would like to nominate Dave Durhofer as president for the upcoming year.
Are there any other nominations from the dais? Okay, hearing none, could I get a second on that nomination from Commissioner Robbins?
Second.
Okay. Amy, would you take roll on that, please?
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Baloo?
Yes.
President Dorhoeffer?
Yes, and thank you.
Okay. Typically, we can just do a voice, we like to do a voice vote, just for the record. You can do it, we can all do it all in favor, but I think for the purpose of this, in the future, we'll do a voice vote. Okay, I would, at this point, I'll take nominations for the election of Park Board Vice President.
I'd like to nominate Jim Baloo.
Second.
Are there any other nominations to be heard from the dais? Okay, I will entertain a second on the motion for Vice President for Commissioner Jim Baloo.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Robbins. A roll, please.
Commissioner Baloo?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
President Dorhoeffer?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. President, you have the floor now at this point to nominate or to appoint a secretary, treasurer, and corporate counsel.
Could I have a motion to appoint Executive Director Jeff Fugere as the board secretary, Superintendent Marla DeSico as the board treasurer, and Tressler LLP as our board attorney?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Baloo?
Yes.
President Dorhoeffer?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is committee liaison assignments. Commissioner Kessler, I'd like you to please stay with 73, since you're probably the closest one that has a child in the program, so
Oh, my goodness.
I'd like to appoint you as our Hawthorne 73 liaison.
Yes.
And the Village of Vernon Hills, we've always done the president, vice president, so I'd like to appoint Commissioners Baloo and Dorhoeffer as the Park District / Village of Vernon Hills liaisons. Next item on the agenda is the W.W. Granger invoice. Could I have a motion to approve the W.W. Granger invoice in the amount of $1,694.62?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Blue? Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
President Dorhofer?
Abstain. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Blue.
None this evening.
Commissioner Meline.
Nope, I wish I'd gotten here earlier, that's all.
Commissioner Robbins.
Nothing this evening.
Commissioner Kessler.
Nothing.
Commissioner Dorhofer has nothing. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Kessler?
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins?
Yes.
Commissioner Meline?
Yes.
Commissioner Blue?
Yes.
President Dorhofer?
Yes, we are adjourned.